All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this morning we're going to be talking, this is our last orientation session, believe it or not. And we're going to be talking about financial management practices and then club chartering. And so I'm going to give you guys some best practices when working with clubs and their financial management. We're still working out some of the other bugs on some of the other pieces on financials, so I'll kind of share with you about that. And then also what our process is currently for club chartering. That may change a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of let you guys, but there's things that we need to know now. So I will start sharing my screen. Okay, I have to get my chat box up again. Sorry, this always is fun to try to keep track of everybody. So, all right. So let's talk about financial management and club. Okay. So I think the one key to remember is, and I know I've talked about this in the past too, is 4-H is a public organization. That makes us a little bit different than, say, Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or, some of those other youth organizations. But what that does, because we are a public organization, then it's open to youth, any youth within our eligibility parameters. Sorry, can't talk this morning. And it allows us, so if they fall within our age range, etc. But we are held to a higher standard when it comes to financial record keeping. And that's both for our county and for our clubs. And so I think it's really important for us to remind our clubs that we are held to a higher standard because of that public organization. So what it also means that our organization is accountable for all of the funds, the money that's received, that's raised in the name of 4-H belongs to the 4-H program, not just money, but also assets. And so, so when our clubs raise money or they get grants to buy equipment or any of those types of things, all of that actually belongs to 4-H. It does not belong to the club per se, because if that club folds, if they decide they don't want to be a club anymore, the money and the assets then come back to the 4-H program. And I know we ran into some of these issues as we've been doing the audits of the firearms that are around the state. And a lot of our 4-H volunteers think because they wrote the grant to the NRA that those firearms belong to them, or they, because they signed the forms with ATF, that those firearms belong to them. And that is not the case. If they personally bought them with their own money and they did not ever plan on donating them to the 4-H program, then that's a different story. But if any of them were purchased. So again, it kind of comes into that financial management. It also, so one of the things we need to remind our clubs is that we have to meet some standards as far as financial management. Now, I will tell you, in the 24 years that I've been doing this, there has been a big shift in financial accountability. We used to not worry about it. I mean, I've been in the county when a IRS person called me, happened to be also a parent in one of our 4-H clubs, and said, I think this club is mishandling money. I think the volunteer is mishandling money. And so we had to do a full-on, audit of the books, etc. And so that really makes for a challenge. And so, we tried to, that was before we required yearly financial summaries and those types of things. And so it does help us to know where the money is. And is it going to completely, are some of these standards going to completely stop any misuse of financial, of funds? No, it's not going to. I mean, we're still going to have somebody that's going to try to embezzle money. Every state I've ever been in, there's at least one or two issues of improper use of money, whether it's embezzlement or whether it's just not following the policies. So it also, what we need to understand is this applies to all of our clubs and our affiliate organizations, whether it's a group, whether that group has 25 cents or to, $2,500. Or in some cases, I know we have some we have some clubs that may have $25,000 in their accounts, which they should not have, but it is, some of them do at any given time. And also we need to remember that funds are raised under the 4-H name and emblem. So if they're using 4-H to raise money, those funds must be used for educational purposes. And so, and that's things like, I always get the question, can they have can they use club funds to pay for the end of the year pizza party? Yes. That's also a recognition. Can they use the club funds to buy t-shirts or jackets? As long as every kid has that opportunity to get a jacket or a t-shirt. We don't want to say, oh, only these kids or only these kids. But, again, that's a promotional or a public relations issue. We want that name out. And so, but they can't. I had a club one time that was raising money. Every year they qualified to go to a national horse contest. And so that club would raise about $25,000 for the trip. This was before we figured all of this out, but they would raise about $25,000. They would pay for all the kids, all the leaders, all the parents, all the siblings, the grandparents, everybody to go on this trip. And then they would pay for a day at Six Flags. They would pay for, all of these fun activities that were not educational. Okay, first of all, money raised in the name of 4-H. You can only, like in that case, they were only supposed to pay for the leaders, the official leaders, and the members of the judging team. They were, you should not raise money in the name of 4-H to pay for mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and brothers and sisters, because it's not benefiting the 4-H program. And second of all, they should not be raising money for, if they're going to go to Florida, that money should not be used to pay to go to Disney. It should be, they can use it to go to, if there's like in this case, they went to Louisville. And so I think they used it a couple times to go to museums in the Louisville area to look at horse racing and those types of things. That would be proper use, but otherwise it's not. So essentially, the extension educator, the program manager, and the community-based instructor in each county where the club or that local 4-H group is located is responsible for ensuring how that money is how those clubs are managing their money and making sure that our clubs are following policies. So that's one of the reasons why it's good to know what the policies are, but also, that's one of the reasons why we have some of these things in place. So here's some best practices. Some of these are policies. Some of them are best practices, and I'll kind of let you know what fits where. I am going to share with you, if you have not seen this document, the Nevada 4-H Money Matters Checklist for a 4-H entity, then this is located on the 4-H website. I will tell you, it has been updated, and will go into effect October 1st. We don't have the new document. There's really not a lot of, there's some changes to it, but essentially it's not going to change the effect of it. But so if you look at this, it's in the PowerPoint. I'm going to move this. Sorry, I'm going to move this off a little bit. Okay. So money raised in the name of 4-H should be deposited in a public financial institution in an account bearing the 4-H club name. that it should not be put in, it really should not be put in a milk, in a coffee can, or, a cash box or any of that. It really needs to be put into a bank account. Now, right now, I know we've been, the whole EIN thing, we've been working on that. If you have clubs that need to open checking accounts and they need an EIN, we can figure out, they can apply for an EIN. There's no reason that they can't apply for one. And then they just won't be connected with 4-H to begin with. And either myself or Dan will work with you or that club to figure that out. Eventually, every club is going to need an EIN number, their own EIN number. I know prior to myself coming here, there was one EIN number that was, that they got from IRS that every club in the state was supposed to use. And that's where we run into the big issue is IRS has said, no, you can't do that. That is not legal to do, because an EIN number is just like a social security number. It's supposed to be connected specifically to an organization, not multiple organizations. And also what it does is if we're using one EIN and say a club in Elko County misappropriates, misuses funds, that could essentially, we could be, that would have caused some grief across the state because of the one EIN number. Not saying anybody has done that, but that's just, an example. If you're using checks, they really should require 2 signatures. Now, I will tell you, 99.9% of the banks do not require 2 signatures on a check. Even though you in the club may require 2 signatures, it can go through the bank with 1 signature. But I think it's still good financial. And when I talk to our extension financial management people, they have always told me clubs should require 2 signatures. And one of those really should be the treasurer of the club, and then the other one should be an adult leader, and those 2 individuals cannot be related. I was with another youth organization, actually when I was a youth, and I was elected treasurer. Probably, I can't remember what year it was. I think I was in high school, and I got the books, and I'm like, this is not right. Well, what had happened was the previous treasurer was, and she was the treasurer, and her mom was the advisor for this group. They ended up embezzling probably about $5,000 over a 1-year period. They were signing checks and paying personal bills, those types of things. So again, that's why you just want to make sure that there is that. A lot of banks now don't allow youth to be on the account, anybody under 18. So if that's the case, then I would have another club volunteer that's not related be a second signer. Now, the other piece that has come up quite a bit lately is access to our club, to the club accounts when a club is disbanded, or just a variety of things. So one of the things that some of our counties have done, and I'm actually okay with this. I know some of you that have been around a while may say, oh, no, you can't do that. But I've actually told them this is okay. We have a couple of counties that actually there's somebody from the extension office that is a signer, has signing authority on all of the club accounts, which is not our favorite thing, but it is something that is acceptable. The main reason is I've probably, since I've been here, the 3 years I've been here, probably 5 counties that I've had to work with either writing a letter to the bank, or calling the bank, or something from the higher up level, letting the bank know, hey, it's okay. This club is no longer in existence. none of the signers that are on that account, we can't find any of them. We need to have access to those funds because 4-H is a public organization and we, that money is ours. And so by having that signing authority, essentially you're not doing anything with the money. It's just if something happens, you have that ability to go into the bank and access those funds. So, like I said, I do, I have said that that's okay for counties to do. And then again, we have this, that document. I would say definitely be familiar with that, with the Money Matters checklist. So let's see. Okay, just making sure. So some good money handling practices for clubs. And really, as you're in the extension office, these are good things as well. But they should be writing receipts for all monies received, especially cash. I will, when I was in the county, especially when I was in the very small county in Michigan, I carried a receipt book in my purse because I don't know how many times I was at the grocery store or I was at Walmart or somewhere, and I would run into a 4-H family or a 4-H volunteer, and they're like, "Oh, I haven't had time to go into the office and give you this. Here, can I give you my registration, or can I give you my give you this money now?" And so by doing that, I was able to then just automatically write them a receipt and give it to them. But the clubs need to have receipts as well. Money should be deposited into the bank within 72 hours. That's especially at the club level. For the university, if you're using university accounts, we do have some guidelines, and I don't know what those are right now, but there are guidelines about how long you can hold on to checks, etc. And then really the accounts should have the bank statements and etc. for those clubs really should be sent to the county extension office so that you're receiving those bank statements, and you can, and then getting a copy to the club. If that that doesn't always happen, but if that that has worked out really well in the counties that have done that. If your county isn't one of those, then that's fine, but you need to, some counties require them to turn in their bank statements monthly. We are going to be requiring the last bank statement of the year to be turned in with the financial record. So you'll at least get the last bank statement, and after a couple of years, then you get to see that. So members should be approving payments at their meetings. This is something that, when the treasurer gives their report, they should be saying, okay, we've gotten these bills in this month. These are the ones that need to be paid. And they really should, the club members should be voting on that. There should be a payment approval form that used, and the receipt, so you have that payment approval form so they can mark, yes, it's been approved, and then a receipt for that purchase should be attached to that, and that should all go into some kind of record keeping system. Financial records need to be kept up to date, and they need to be recorded at each or they reported at each club meeting. And it's really best if the club has a treasurer to be able to do that, because we're giving those young people lifelong skills in learning money management, etc. All right, are there any questions to this point? Sorry, I'm also catching up on who all has joined us. Okay. Nobody has any questions. Okay, so I'm going to go into some others. So these are some things that they may not necessarily be anywhere in our guidelines or are in our documents, but they're things that I found from other states that I think are super helpful, and I'm actually going to take them to policies and procedures and try to, yes, I do see you guys as attendees, so thank you. So I am also, so I'm going to try to get us so we can have these in ours, because I think they're really good, just best practices. So petty cash is really not encouraged, and they should have another system. If a club votes to have a petty cash available, they should not have over $25 in that petty cash. I mean, again, these are guidelines, and then there should be records for that petty cash included in the monthly treasurer's report. So debit cards, this is something, and I know, I guess you can see it a little bit. This is something that's becoming more and more common with the clubs, because more and more banks are, they issue debit cards, as well as the fact that a lot of places don't take checks anymore. Oh, and Diana, so on petty cash, that's if a club has, if they've got an account, but then they want to have cash that's available, so if they need to run and get some supplies, then they might have, $25 in available in cash. Like that would be when it's in the coffee can or in a jar, or, some kind of like a money box or something. It wouldn't necessarily, or, and granted, okay, so I know Stormy's on here and they do a yard sale for their program. And that, yes, you're going to have petty cash there because you need to make change for people. That's a completely different situation than if they always have petty cash available. It really isn't needed, but just in case. Does that answer your question? Okay. Petty cash used to be a big thing in offices. You had a petty cash account, and then you didn't have to worry about P cards or writing checks or anything. Okay, so debit cards. So there really is a higher risk for using debit cards for 4-H clubs, because it's so much easier to either grab the wrong one out of your wallet or to use, just a variety of things. So they're not encouraged, but, like I said, I know that, we have clubs that have them. Really, the club should only have one debit card in that 4-H club's name. It should not be in anybody's, not in one particular person's name. There should not be a PIN that's tied to the account. And the reason for that is then it has to be used as a credit card, and it requires a signature or zip code or something when you make a purchase. Now, I know some of the businesses now are going to, if it's $50 or under, you don't have to sign for it, those types of things. But essentially that kind of cuts down. If there is a PIN number, because I think they just automatically come with a PIN number, those really should not be advertised to people that are using it. There should never be cash advances or withdrawals taken from that debit card. The original receipt needs to be kept with that purchase, so you've got that. The debit card should have the club name on it, not an individual person. And also, there should be a checkout system for the card. It should be done. They should have a written log of when it's checked out and who it's checked out to, when it was returned. And with that, you also can make sure that your charges correspond with that checkout log entry. If there's charges going against the, going on the card and nobody has it checked out, then those would be items that you would want to check, as a club. And so there absolutely should not be any personal purchases on that club debit card. We need to make sure the volunteers and the youth know that. If there are, sometimes I'll just use this and then I'll pay it back, but then it doesn't get paid back. And so, you need to, that's one of the, it's a lot easier to do it this way. if something like that happens, then the clubs need to realize, whoever discovers it, they need to let the extension office know. And then, you know, if you find that it really is an issue, you know, you need to let the state office know. You know, really, even if you have an accusation, we should know that, because we can help you with that, you know, calling for an audit of the books and all of those things. PayPal accounts. This is another online third-party vendor. It may not be PayPal. It may be another, again, another third-party online vendor. But, you know, sometimes, to me, this is an easier way to collect money. You know, a lot of parents are more, you know, you can send an invoice through PayPal. You can do all these different things. Great record keeping, but there's, again, guidelines. So clubs really should only have one account for their club, and the club treasurer and an adult volunteer should be the only person with access to that account. Now, I don't know what the rules are for PayPal. It may be that you have to be over 18. And so in that case, then it needs to be 2 adult volunteers that are not related. If for some reason a club treasurer or an adult volunteer that's on the account leaves, then the password needs to be reset and then sent to the new people. Again, original receipts need to be kept. If they're receiving money through PayPal, which is, you know, one of the reasons to have it, that's a good way to, you know, it's important to provide that copy of deposits to the treasurer. So essentially you can go on and pull off the report and give it to the treasurer to maintain in the financial records. And again, you know, it's a responsibility of that treasurer and that adult volunteer to develop a plan for keeping track of all of the stuff in these accounts. They really should have it documented in writing, and it should be provided to the county extension office. One of the ways to do that is when they turn in the annual financial report, then that should be attached to it. And then that way you have a copy with instructions of, if it changes, let us know. And again, absolutely no personal purchases using that. Right, any questions on those two? Again, those are the debit card and the PayPal stuff is not currently in any of our financial resources. You will be getting, I have actually put in a copy of a couple of other states' financial guidelines for clubs that I think are good, and you know, I think we need to add things like that into ours. So okay, so I know we have not been super tough on collecting these, collecting the accounts, both the audit and the financial summary or financial report every year from clubs. But I will tell you, from this point forward, we will be very strict on that. And so essentially there are guidelines under the state 4-H website. If you go to policies and procedures, we do have guidelines. They are being updated in 2018. So the new guidelines will be available on October 1st, but essentially that will take effect for the next year. And so for this year, you follow the policies that are currently on there. Again, you know, all state, district, county, group fund money that is where money is collected, etc., must be audited. Now, I don't know, we do have audit guidelines. If you go, I'm going to pull this Money Matters page back. It does say, let's see. So on here, conduct a end of the year or review audit of, you know, financial records. I'm actually going to put on the website an audit form that can be used for the clubs. I really like having clubs, you know, there's a kind of a method to that, but I'm going to have that form so then they can, It's just a certification that it's been audited, and it just tells the people that audited the books. So just in case. So again, that will go up probably next week. And then, so what needs to be audited? So any chartered 4-H club, all our affiliate groups, so if you have a leaders council, those books should be, if you have project committees that have money, that should be, because I know we do have some counties, like a couple counties have a shooting sports committee, and they have money. So those need to be going through that. If you have after school programs that have money, that are run through your program. Now, if it's a grant and it's a different program, but it just depends if it's an after school club. So market animal sale committees, if they are part of your leaders council, or if they're part of your livestock committee or something to that effect, then they really need to be completing these same financial reports for the for us. If they're their own separate entity, because I know, like in Humboldt County, they're their own separate entity, and they don't, 4-H is an extension is involved, but they don't have any control over the funding, etc. And so that is different. We have an MOU with that organization, so we don't have to worry about that. And then professional associations, we don't need to worry about that one in Nevada. So the audit, when they do the audits, they should form a 3-person financial audit committee. It should be composed of a volunteer within their club, the club treasurer, and then if they can get another adult who's not part of the same 4-H entity, that could be, another leader. It could be somebody, a friend of theirs, etc. I think that that's good to have that outside entity to review that. And each group, should accurately account for all collected funds and then reconcile the checking and cash accounts every year. And really the emphasis for this is not, yes, we have we have responsibility for financial management, but it's also teaching all of the members basic money management skills. And, I think that that's really important if the members learn some of those basic money management skills. So every year, all of our individual clubs and the affiliates are required, and this is a requirement now. It just has been very laxed for probably 5 or 6 years, but they're going to be required to turn in the annual financial reporting form, which looks like, no, that is the instructions. Let me pull, here is the form. This is the form that they are required to fill out. These are all located on the state 4-H website under policies and procedures. So they need to turn this in. There are step-by-step instructions on how to complete this for the volunteers or the members. It's pretty simple. They need to do an annual club budget. So, if they're raising $25,000, we need to know what that money is being used for. One of the states that I was in, I don't even remember now which one it was, but our clubs, it was university policy that they had to spend what they took in that year. They could not hold over money from year to year. And same with our affiliates. I had a leaders council and a livestock committee that was sitting on about $25,000, and they didn't have any plans. They were just hoarding the money. And that's when you start questioning that kind of nonprofit status, etc. So they had to come up with a plan for how they were going to spend that. They ended up collecting more. They built a new food booth at the fairgrounds that was run by 4-H. But again, the clubs need to have a reason to do the fundraising. You don't just fundraise to fundraise. And then again, that financial audit committee certification form. That is one that is not up there right now, but it will be up there. I think that those are really important. All 3 of those documents, along with the last month's bank statement, need to be submitted to my office no later than December 1st. so you're going to, at the county level, you're going to have to set your deadline earlier than that. And with that, the next slide. So with that, the financial reporting form and the audit certification needs to be kept on, and then, and the budget needs to be kept in your offices for 5 years. And you can just keep them in a file. Now, one of the things, which is a little bit different than I know you guys have done in the past, we don't have capacity to store all of those. I mean, it's just not feasible for us. And so what we will do, so come probably the 1st of October, I will send you a form that will have, okay, you're going to tell me what clubs turned in the financial reporting form and the audit certification form. You're going to, and then you're going to send those back to me, and that's what I will keep on file here, and then you will keep those other documents on file. It may happen, we will probably do, when I'm out visiting your county, I may say, oh, okay, let me see your financial, the financial records for the clubs. And so I may just look to make sure that you have those on file for the past 5 years. Now, granted, you're not going to probably have those for the last 5 years, so we're starting from this year forward, unless you have last year's. But I will be, and I'll pick 4 or 5 counties every year to do that with, to make sure that, we're following those procedures. They really should be in a locked filing cabinet. They should not be placed, just in a regular filing cabinet. Any questions about that, about the financial reports, or what's required for our clubs? And again, I'll send all this out to you guys probably in September, so then you can share it with your clubs that what's being required. And you're gonna get pushback, but life's tough. They have to, if they don't do it, then they could essentially be put on probation until it's done. What person in the office deals with, it's up to you in your office of who you want to have deal with that. So, sometimes it's the administrative assistant, sometimes it's the 4-H coordinator, sometimes it's the extension educator. It just, we let you decide. In our office, essentially it is, you work a lot with Francis on some of these things. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about club assets, because this is something, like I said, we've run into this last year. And so any club that handles money or gets material assets needs to have, should have a clearly defined and known procedure for disposing of those if the club disbands. So essentially, a lot of times, like if a club disbands and they have shooting sports equipment, then the shooting sports equipment goes back to the office, and either it can be used for county activities, or if they have another shooting sports club that starts up, then that equipment can be used there. I know, Marie's on here, and there was a club switched leaders in Carson, and so all the equipment just moved to the new leader. For shooting sports. I mean, and it works out, it works out well. Now, what they can't do is say, oh, I've got this equipment, now I'm gonna donate it to the local Boys and Girls Club so they can use it. Or I'm gonna, I'm moving to another organization and I'm just taking the equipment with me. You can't do that. Money and assets acquired in the name of 4-H must be used to benefit 4-H, even if the original club disbands. So I think I've shared this example with you guys in the past. I can't remember, but when we had a big robotics program in a county, and we had some individuals within that robotics program that had some really good contacts. So they got an armored truck donated to them to haul their equipment around. They also, not only did they do the robotics in the competitions, they also used it to go into the schools and did the reading and robotics things with kids. And so this hauled all their equipment around. And then a couple years later, they ended up getting 2 12-passenger vans donated to them to transport kids from place to place. So when all of these things were happening, I looked at the county educator and I said, you do realize that when this club disbands, Bannock County now owns an armored truck and 2 12-passenger vans. And she just went, oh, that's awesome. And so we need to, so sometimes you have to think about those things. I had another club that had, we found out afterwards. So the leader wanted to buy, it was a goat club. They wanted to buy this really good goat, to a male goat to breed, and a billy goat to breed. And so the leader paid for half of the goat. The club paid for the other half of the goat. They used it, they would people would come breed to the goat and the money would go back to the club, or, half and half, whatever. Probably not the best fundraiser, but, we didn't know it was happening until this all kind of came about. That club decided to disband, and here we have a goat. Here we have this billy goat. What are we going to do with it? Because half of it belonged to the 4-H club, and technically, it should not have been allowed to happen. But essentially, the leader had to buy out the club's half of that goat. But again, it caused a lot of issues. So we just have to think about those things. The other one, disbursement among the members or the leaders of the club is not acceptable. I've had clubs that, they decide to disband. Oh, we have $100 in our account. Well, here's $5 for you, and $5 for you, and $5 for you. Doesn't work that way. So they have that money, has to go back. Or, I have on here, like the equipment for our livestock clubs. A lot of clubs buy the equipment to fit their animals for fair. And then when they're done, oh, I want the sheep shears, or I want the, I'm even to the point of livestock panels and squeeze chutes for cattle, those types of things. Who's going to take those? And again, it's not, individual members cannot take those. Those need to go back to the 4-H program. So all of a sudden you may be sitting in your office one day and you have a squeeze chute delivered to your office, which I've seen happen. So you have to, get them to think about some of those things. So there are some appropriate options for those. So things like they could donate them to the county 4-H council, especially if it's money. They can donate it. They can do, they can put it in an account for scholarship or for an award. They can donate it to the Nevada, I think it's the Nevada 4-H Foundation account. We don't really have an endowment here. Sorry, I used the wrong phrase. I was doing that portion at midnight last night. So I used the wrong phrase, but they could donate it to the state if they wanted, a scholarship or something like that. They could sponsor a 4-H award at your county show or at your county level. Maybe there's enough money for 5 years of, giving $25 to the outstanding 4-H member. And so, they would donate it to, that would be a sponsoring of an award. They can also donate it to another approved 4-H club. So again, they can give it to another 4-H program. They just can't give it to a non-4-H program. Any questions regarding that? Okay. Can assets be sold and then the funds be passed on, as you just said? That is a possibility. Depending on what it is, we may, that may be a one-on-one situation, but I have seen that happen before too. So you could sell that asset and then use the funds in one of these ways. Probably don't want to do that a lot with the like the shooting sports equipment, but just because of all the laws related to some of those things. But you know, a squeeze chute for a steer, you know, is probably, you know, not going to be something that you're going to use. Or an armored truck. You just, you know, that was awesome, I'm telling you. And they had it wrapped with 4-H all over it. It was really cool, but you know, what are you going to do with an armored truck later? All right. So sales tax exemption. This is something I get questions on all the time. Just because a club is tax exempt, that doesn't mean that they are sales tax exempt. The tax exemption is from paying federal income tax. It's only appropriated dollars or tax dollars that are exempt from sales or hotel tax. So you still have to pay you still have to pay that sales tax. Now, granted, like if you have a club that's buying items to then resell, they're going to pay the sales tax on the items that they're buying. But then I believe the rule, now I could be wrong, we'd want to check with a tax person before you take my word. But my understanding is they don't have to charge sales tax or pay sales tax on the items that they're selling because they've paid it the first time. The university is tax exempt on sales tax if you're using your tax dollars to pay for those items. It is not sales tax exempt for those clubs. So yeah, the university is sales tax. If you're using university accounts, those are sales tax exempt because they are because you're using appropriated dollars. So, but if you have a club that wants to do a fundraiser, you know, where they want to buy something and then resell it, let us know, you know, let me know, and I will, I can find that answer out. I know what it was like in other states, but I'm not sure what our rules are in Nevada. Every state has different sales tax rules. It's awesome. Okay, so livestock sales. I wanted to bring this up because this is a whole different can of worms. It is super awesome and I love it. So every year we have those sale people that buy at the sale that say, I need a W-9. We cannot issue a W-9. It is not a donation to the 4-H program. It is not tax deductible in the way that they purchase it. There are ways it may be tax deductible, but not in just the sheer purchasing of an animal at the market animal sale. The reason for that is they are not donating to the 4-H program for educational purposes. They are buying a young person's animal, and that money goes to an individual, not the organization. Even though the check may be written to, you know, whatever, it is not, then we turn around and give it to the young person. I had, I think I was still, you guys don't, so the head person at USDA, probably, I would say close to 18 or 19 years ago, I had a long conversation with this person about livestock sales. And she said she had actually just gotten, like within the last week, and had a long conversation with IRS about market animal sales. And essentially, you know, technically we could be sort of money laundering in those, but it's not, because it's still an auction. But, you know, we're taking in money and then turning around and giving it to another person. But essentially, it is, you know, that it's because that money goes to an individual. If you do take, like some counties, I've heard, I don't know if any in Nevada do this, but I've heard across the country, some counties, if they have a market animal sale, 5% of that sale stays within the 4-H program, which is perfectly acceptable to do, especially if you're running the market animal sale, you need to have money for the time and effort. And so that 5% could potentially be tax deductible because it is going to the 4-H program for educational purposes. What happens is they call and they need that W-9, and because they want to write it off on their taxes, and we can't give it to them. So then they get mad and etc. But we need to be upfront with our volunteers or with our buyers and letting them know this is not a tax deductible sale. Now they may talk to their tax accountant, and they may find ways to make it tax deductible. One of the things I always tell counties is, if you can, publish the list of buyers in your local newspaper or advertise it in some way, because then the business could potentially use it as a marketing tax, as a business tax deduction, because it was a public relations thing. But it's not always guaranteed that that's going to be the case. So again, they need to make sure that they talk to somebody about that. So a couple of other things. I just found a boo-boo. Who just spotted the boo-boo? I want to know who's paying attention to the use of the 4-H name and emblem. But so in other aspects, we do have 4-H name and emblem rules, IRS rules, and federal tax laws. And so, it's really encouraged that people talk to their tax accountants, not only for the buyers, but also for our youth, especially those that are selling those animals for exorbitant amounts of money, which I know happens in Nevada. And so they need to, because if you earn anything over a certain amount of money, you're supposed to declare it on your, declare it as income. And that would be, what that is that income is anything above the floor price. So some states call it blue sky money. Some people, it just depends on what you call it in your county, but it's anything above the floor price. If it's over, it used to be like $600. If you got anything over $600, you had to declare it as income. And so even if you're under 18, you still are supposed to do that. So you really need to encourage everybody to talk to somebody that knows tax laws. I always say there are days that I feel like I need to be a lawyer, a tax accountant, a public relations guru, and a conflict management person, all in the same day. And I'm not a tax expert at all, but I've learned a few things over the years. And again, if you have a market animal sale committee that's not part of the 4-H program, they're their own separate entity, you have to grant them authority to use the 4-H name and emblem if they're advertising it as a 4-H and FFA market animal sale, or 4-H market animal sale, or 4-H FFA and Grange market animal sale. They need to have that authority. And so you do that in the next section of the presentation, is the chartering. So, we need to make sure, because they can't misuse that 4-H name and emblem. And also, if they're used for fundraising, then, you need to make sure that that the money's being used for educational purposes. Oh, I didn't change that. Sorry, guys. I forgot I had specific things. There are, this was a slide I used in Idaho and I forgot to change. I apologize, that extension office. So, but there are a couple of documents that are going to be in the Nevada box that are specific to livestock sales that I want you to be, that are good to read through. So again, here's those two documents. Here's links to them, but I also have them in the box for you to download. Any questions about market animal sales? Okay. Fundraising. So fundraising by affiliates, by clubs or affiliates. So really any club that does a fundraising event should be submitting a fundraiser request form to the local extension office. And we do have some counties that do this. If you do not, then, and you want like a sample fundraiser request form, let me know. I can get you some. It's really, you need to know what the clubs are fundraising, what they're doing. And also, making sure that not every club is hitting up the same businesses or doing the same thing. So you just really want to make sure that they, that what's going on. They need to follow guidelines that are established by the county and the state, and those are in there. Fundraising programs using the 4-H name and emblem need to be carried out for specific educational purposes. Again, we need to know what they're doing. Especially, we do have some counties, that are going after, they've got businesses in their community that they're asking money for. I know those that have mines in their community, they get quite a bit of money from the mines. And so you need to know, you do it at the county level, you're asking for county support. Well, it's the same thing that happens here. We have protocol that we have to work with as far as working with the development people on businesses that we can contact and we can't contact individually for donations to 4-H. I know in some of the other states I've been in, there was a list, there was a top 200 list that we were not even allowed to think about contacting. And, Micron, Simplot, Hewlett Packard, we had all of those businesses, which, but the thing is, so the university was going after multi-million dollars. We were going after thousands of dollars. And then if you have a club going after hundreds of dollars, which one do you think they're going to give it to? They're going to give it to the club because they're only asking for hundreds of dollars instead of millions of dollars. So, you want to make sure, so you want to make sure that the clubs aren't asking the same people that you ask for money at the county level, but then also you want to make sure that all of the clubs are not asking for the same company for money. So that's why it's really important to have that. Again, the money raised needs to be used for educational purposes. And then, it needs to be accounted for. The fundraising, they need to make sure that they're using the 4-H name and emblem properly, and that they have a plan for how those funds are going to be spent. If the use of the 4-H name and emblem in fundraising especially is not allowed if it exploits the 4-H programs, the volunteer leaders, the youth participants, USDA, Cooperative Extension, the land-grant university, or the employees. So, again, those are why that's why we're pretty strict about that. It also should not be used to imply endorsement of commercial firms, products, or services. So an example I have of that is when I lived when I worked in North Dakota, we had an individual that owned a bakery on the other side of the state. They wanted to start making and selling 4-H bread. Like they would make a loaf of bread and put the 4-H emblem in it, or cookies, or so. I can't remember exactly. I think it was cookies actually. They wanted to use the 4-H clover in cookies. They were denied that request because they weren't willing to give any money back to the 4-H program. It was only going to be used, for her own profit. And so you can't use, some of you have heard me say that when I do the 4-H name and emblem presentation. But again, it's the same thing with fundraisers. A lot of times, the next one is if you're doing a fundraiser and you're selling, a product or a service of some kind, then you should have on there, you should have a disclaimer on there, a portion of the sale price for this product or service will be used to promote 4-H educational programs. No endorsement of the product or service by 4-H is implied or intended. And so, And so you have to, you have to be careful. And Stormy, I just saw your question. Is there a limit to the size of donations clubs can receive or leaders council? No, not at this point. There is, if they get a $25,000 donation, that'd be fabulous. As long as they have a plan for how they're going to spend that $25,000. So it's just, usually the examples of, most clubs don't think in thousands of dollars. It's kind of, it's kind of like, I don't think in, I mean, I'm beginning to think in millions of dollars, but if I can get $1,000, I get super excited about something, about that donation. And so we have to just, it's just kind of that level of thinking. So, okay, everybody understand this with the disclaimer and the sale or the implied endorsement, etc. Okay. Any other questions regarding financial management and best practices? Because I'm going to move on to club chartering next. Yes, it's in the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is in the Nevada box, Marie. So you will have a copy of that disclaimer. And if you need it again, just let me know and I can email it to you. Okay, and that was something, honestly, I just learned too. I'll be honest with you. I had never seen that disclaimer, but when I saw that, I went, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really should have that. All right, so we're moving on to club chartering. So currently our club chartering, currently in Nevada, they have required charters for affiliate groups, for leaders councils and for clubs and for all of the different organizations. But technically that's not really how it's supposed to work. So these guidelines are essentially really how it's supposed to work. There's not much change to it at all. As far as the chartering process for 4-H clubs, there's absolutely no change. But what I've done is try to tell you the difference between chartering and letters of authorization. So a club charter is the official certificate from that's been issued by USDA, that's signed by the Secretary of Agriculture or their designee and the LGU representatives. And I had one on my desk yesterday because I signed it yesterday. So it is signed by, I believe it's signed by Lisa Loxman, National 4-H Headquarters. She's the National Program Leader for 4-H. It is signed by Dr. Lyles. It is signed by myself, and then it is signed by the local county office. And it has the name of the club, etc. And it is typically issued to 4-H clubs. There is also what's called a letter of authorization. So you don't need to give, like your leaders council and those types of things, those really don't need to be chartered per se. But it's a letter that's issued by the state 4-H office that grants that organization authorization to use the 4-H name and emblem. So again, those are like the leaders council, livestock sale committees, if you have any project committees, if you have, just a variety of things. If essentially if it's not a 4-H club, then you would have it letter of authorization. Also, if you have an after school program that you're doing that you don't necessarily have the club structure of, then that's where you would do a letter of authorization. And with that, a lot of times we'll ask about an MOU, memorandum of understanding. And so I think that that's really an important piece too, is we get, that some of those we want to have an MOU in place. So it kind of puts it in our radar. So why do we charter 4-H clubs? Well, number one, it's a federal regulation. It mandates, the federal rule is that every one of our 4-H youth development entities be officially chartered through a charter certificate or that letter of authorization. That identifies and recognizes the 4-H entities that are eligible and approved to use the 4-H name and emblem. And that also is the groups that can officially participate in 4-H activities and educational programs. We do have a database here at the office that has all of our chartered clubs in it, and and that really is, I mean, to me, the certificate, the club wants a certificate just for prosperity, you know, for their own sake. But to me, if they're not in my database, then that's where I have a problem. Some of you might remember through 4-H Online, there is a place to do, to mark if they're chartered, if they're not. And so I want to figure out how we can do some of those things as well, utilize that system for some of that as well. And so, but it is, you know, that is the official way. So how do they receive a charter? So, oh, I forgot to change that. So what they do is, well, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So again, I just kind of put it in here to change that. So in order for a club to receive a charter, to even apply for a charter, so all of our new clubs need to apply for a charter. They need to complete the UNCE 4-H charter application, and I am trying to find that right now in my stuff. Okay, so I'm pulling it over. So this is the charter application. This is on the website if you have not seen it. They must complete this portion, so fill in this page. They need to sign the Equal Opportunity Certification Statement. And this will be something that is changing next year, I will tell you. With the civil rights audit, we are going to be required to collect equal opportunity, or however, I can't remember the word. We're going to have to collect that for every club in the very beginning, you know, each year. And so just saying that they understand, essentially it kind of says the same thing. They understand that we are equal opportunity and they must follow those guidelines. Then the second page of this is a kind of the application. So the new 4-H group, if they're just getting a charter, they need to include that signed equal opportunity statement, a program plan or a plan of work. So what are they going to do for over the year? There's a sample one on the website. You know, there's a template on the website, but they need to be thinking about what they want to do. And then they need to have, they need to create their constitution and bylaws. So here is, these are the guidelines and kind of Q&A, frequently asked questions about the constitution and bylaws. And then there is a template on the website for clubs. All they have to do is just fill in the blanks if they really want to. If they want to make a few changes to it, then that's fine. You as the staff person need to make sure that you look those over though, and that there's nothing that goes against our policies and nothing that's going to get us in trouble. So again, you've got, you know, here's that, and then the instructions for frequently asked questions. So, so that would be the first time charter. Then right now it says that we require charter renewal every year. I will tell you right now, USDA does not require that. I'm not sure why Nevada decided to do that. I've talked to the Policies and Procedures Committee, and essentially we kind of made the decision that once a club is chartered, they don't need to recharter. What they have to do, they still have to do some things though. I mean, it's not like once you're in, they still have to follow up. So, and I'll get to that in just a minute. So this is for the clubs to get a charter. For a group to get a letter of authorization, then they need to complete, it's a letter of authorization application, but essentially it's the charter application. We don't have that right now. What will happen until October 1st is they're going to fill out the same charter application, but you know, I'm going to recognize, oh, this isn't a club. This is a leaders council, or this is a project club or project committee. I'm going to issue a letter of authorization rather than a charter, a certificate. And so, but they still need to sign that equal opportunity statement, and they still need to complete constitution and bylaws if it's applicable to them. So those things still need to be completed. So how do you request those from, how at the county level do you get those? So what you need to do is you need to send the completed charter application with the signed equal opportunity statement. So you need to send in that two-page, that two-page trifold or double fold to the state 4-H office. From there, and it typically right now goes to Francis, I didn't want to put specific names in there because, you never know. I mean, I don't foresee anything changing, but it goes to the state 4-H office, and we will complete the charter. We'll do the certificate. She's got her method of making or doing the certificates, and we're going to mail it back to you at the county to give to the club. Now, my recommendation for you is to make a copy of that charter for your files at the office, just so in case a club loses it and wants one or whatever, or you've got that. We also will keep, we will then, when we issue that charter, we put them into the database. So that way we've got all of the information in the database that we need. I think in the past, the counties have sent copies of the program of work and the completed constitution and bylaws to the state. We don't need that. There's, again, it's just, we don't need to see that. As long as you've got a copy of that in your office, then I think you're fine. Okay. Any questions on this, on how to request or what they need to submit? Okay, so the other piece I'm pulling up right now, this is a document called Club Charter Official Requirements. And this may change in the coming, for the new year, but essentially this is here. So it goes into, they must have 5 or more members from 3 different families, and they need to meet the age requirements. They must meet the affirmative action guidelines. Again, that's our, those are that. They need to have the identified leadership structure. They need to have at least 1 certified volunteer. They need to have evidence of a planned educational program. They need to have written constitution and bylaws. They need to have that federal tax ID number. Right now, we haven't been super strict on that, but if we can get an EIN, that would be great. As we move forward, they will have to file an annual e-postcard and then complete the annual financial statement. So this you don't necessarily have to send back to us, but this is just a checklist for you. Okay. So how does a club stay in good standing and not potentially lose their charter? So to stay in good standing, they must provide a positive youth development environment that upholds the dignity and educational purposes of the 4-H program. To me, that kind of states, it goes in line with our code of conduct, etc. They have to, if they're not doing that, then we can pull a charter. They must maintain the 5 members from 3 different families. They need to complete the annual financial reporting form and the club audit form on time each year. So, that on time thing, granted, you can, if you want to give them a little leeway, you can, but not necessarily, you don't have to. But that is, if we have clubs that aren't submitting that financial report, I have actually, I went, not since I've been in Nevada, but I went into a club and I disabled that club in 4-H Online because they had not submitted their annual financial report, and it was like 4 months late. Well, once we disabled that and parents couldn't enroll their kids, that club leader got that financial report turned in. So that you can easily do that if they do not follow, the procedures. They also need to follow all of our UNCE 4-H youth development policies and procedures. Again, right now, we've got them everywhere, but for the October 1st, they will be in one place where everybody can find them. And, everybody needs to be aware of those. So do clubs and affiliates need to renew their authorizations? So again, right now it says that they need to do every 5 years. Based on USDA guidelines, and if you look at any of the chartering documents, and those again are going to be in the Nevada box for you to look at, any of the questions and answers about Nevada or about the national chartering process, it says that they do not have to renew as long as they remain in good standing, and that's where I said the good standing. But if a club disbands for a year, at least a year, and then, but then they come back with a new volunteer, then what you need to do is we can suspend that club. We don't have to necessarily disband them. We can, if you really think that it's going to be up and going again, you just have an off year where you couldn't find a volunteer, then just let us know, hey, you need to suspend this club. It's not deactivating them or anything, or you can do it in 4-H online, just suspend it. They come back with a new volunteer. What you need to do is just let us know at the state level who that new volunteer is. If they've got the same name, everything. We just need to make that change in the database. If the club doesn't disband, but it gets new adult volunteers, we don't have to reissue the charter. You just let us know who those new volunteers are. We'll make that change in the database. If we have a club that changes their name, which we all know happens. Maybe they've been around for 5 or 6 years, but the new kids that are in the club don't like that name. They want a new name. But nothing else changes. We don't necessarily have to reissue a charter for that club. We just have to make that change in the database. So what we'll do is, we'll say it's the, fluffy sheep club, and then in parentheses we'll put, they used to be the goat makers or something, I don't know. So that way we know what the old name was, but then what the new name is. And then because what'll happen once everything gets sorted out with IRS, we submit all we do is submit a yearly, that database yearly to IRS, and then they can make those changes. So does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. It seemed like there was a lot of steps and a lot of processes that were really unnecessary when I moved here. I was like, oh, we don't need to do, I'm requiring you guys to do enough already, and I'm trying to make this a lot easier process. So, because it really should be a simple process. Shouldn't be 25 steps. All right. So, some changes that are coming. So I know everybody knows about a lot of people know about the whole IRS issue. We've been trying to get it solved with IRS for a long time. It just has taken a while. It has now been turned over to Dan in the Extension Fiscal. He's working with IRS to try to get everything back in order. It's just kind of trying to time everything, but he is working on that. So in the meantime, if you have a club or your county is accepting donations, and especially this is more if they're accepting big donations, or if you're planning on using them for something else and they need like some kind of documentation saying that they made the donation. You can have that donation, that money sent to, we can deposit it into the State 4-H Foundation account, and the university doesn't charge us a fee for that, so you're not losing any money by doing that, and then you still have all of that money available to you. So what happens is that money's deposited, and then you work with Francis to set up the process for accessing that money. So what we've done in the past is One way we've done it is if the county has a P card, then you use your P card to pay a bill. Say like, okay, Stormy, you've got the robotics stuff. I know you guys have a different system in your county for the robotic stuff, but if you did have a big donation come in, we could put it in the State 4-H Foundation account. If you had a P card, you could, if you needed to buy equipment, you could buy the equipment with your P card. You call Frances, you get the work tag number or whatever you need in Workday to do that, and you charge it against that account. She keeps track of all of those things, and then what happens too is when it comes through Workday, I actually approve it as well. And so there'll be some things that come through and I'll say, okay, Frances, tell me about this. We have some counties that have collected money for camp that they want to use to donate, or that they want to use to send youth to camp. It's actually very simple to send them, to put that money in the 4-H Foundation account, because what we do is we just transfer the money from the foundation account to the camp account. There really is no money being transferred. And it takes, so is that if they aren't chartered yet? No, that's if anything right now. The reason for that is because we're still dealing with that whole tax exemption thing, and we do have, some clubs, so we've had some clubs or some counties that have gone in and asked for money from Walmart. Walmart goes into IRS system and it shows that we're not an entity. The university is an entity, so the State 4-H Foundation account is correct. And so the other way we've done things, so we just had a county that got a large donation. It went into the State 4-H Foundation account. They actually bought a trailer with the money, or bought them a trailer, shooting sports trailer. So what happened is Frances actually paid for that trailer with her P card, because for some reason I don't think the county had one, or I can't remember exactly, but she paid for it with her P card and got that all, so then we just charged it against their money, and she keeps a separate spreadsheet of your money that's in that account. So that way it's not spent, and we wouldn't spend it on anything else. Like, she knows exactly how much is state money, how much is, this county's money, how much is this county's money, and how much is this county's money. So, and we can give you those reports anytime you want those. So again, that's our solution at this point. And it's worked really well. There for a while, we were able to deposit the money in and then turn around and send a check to the county or the club. And that kind of ended a couple weeks, or about 6 months ago, because we had this large donation come in and they weren't very comfortable turning around and sending the money back. But again, it's just like if it's in any account, it's still accessible to you. So the other piece is if you think you're going to be getting quite a few donations, and I think it would be a good idea, especially, you could always set up your own 4-H foundation or your own university foundation account to accept those donations. What that does too is not only does it, instead of sitting in a checking account that you're not earning any money on, the university is earning money for you if you have money in an account. And so and they earn it's higher than that. They get like a 10% return on their investments. And so it's really worth it, I think, to do that rather than having it sit in a checking account. So does that make sense to everybody? I hope. I know it's not the best solution. Dan and I are working our butts off. I see we can just, so what you can do for the EIN, I guess I thought I addressed that. So what they can do is they can apply for an EIN number. And I've got to sit down and really kind of think about this. What they can do is apply for their EIN number. Then you let us know what that club EIN number is. We put it into the database. And then once everything gets sorted out, which our goal is to have everything sorted out by the end of the summer. And I know Dan was working on it, and then budget time came up, and end of the fiscal year, so he's had to kind of step away from it for just a little while. But what'll happen is once we get that all sorted out with IRS, then that EIN number will then be tied to our number at, with IRS. So they will be part of 4-H, and they will get all of that tax exemption, everything from IRS. So, and I will, I'm going to make a note to ask Dan, or I'll call my contact at IRS. It's kind of sad when you have the direct line for a person at IRS, because she's the only one there that understands 4-H. And so she's the one I talk to. And I have her direct number. So I will talk to her about those EIN numbers. If we get in a pickle, call me. I will work with you. We do have another solution, but I'm not going to record it. So just call me and I can talk you through that. So like I said, there is another solution if we have some issues with the club. So, all right. Anything else? We've got about 4 minutes till we were scheduled to be done. Any other questions? I promise you, we have been working on this IRS thing. I've been working on it for, I know, at least 2 years. It is not an easy process. As everybody knows with IRS, it's never an easy process, and it has just been one thing after another. But I promise you, we are working on it. It's been slow and stressful. Any other questions? Okay. So UNR, well, and I've got to look at UNR policy. It really is, we do, like, it may say that the coordinator or extension educator should not be on the 4-H accounts. But again, we run into some issues where we've had clubs disband. There wasn't anybody from the office that had access to those accounts. And it was I think, Stormy, your county was one of those. Yeah, and I mean, it was a pain in the butt to try to get that. So we do have some counties that put their, that do have the coordinator as a signer on, having signing authority on all of the accounts, all of the club accounts. But they don't, they are not actively doing anything with those accounts. All they are is literally, they can walk in, and if the club disbands, they can walk in and have access to those funds. That is really the big, the only reason to have it. And so again, so if we have issues, then the counties have done that. So I think we have 2 or 3 counties that have done that. And the university has been okay with that. I've asked I've asked people, and they are everybody I've talked to has been okay with that solution. Again, we're not trying to, we're not going to take their money. We're not going to do any of that. We just need to have access to those, because banks are getting like everything else, and they're tough to, you can't just walk into the local bank anymore and, oh, so, hey, Stormy, we know you, here's your 4-H money. I mean, it just doesn't work that way anymore. Maybe in Eureka or maybe in Battle Mountain, which would be awesome, but some of our, it just isn't the case. As banks get bigger and everything, they just don't have that customer service. So, okay, yeah. So yeah, new Wells Fargo policies, you can't deposit cash unless that's actually a Chase Bank policy too. So I do know that because my parents were trying to deposit some cash into my son's savings account, and they wouldn't let them. Now they could write a check and deposit it, but they couldn't deposit cash because their name wasn't on the account. So again, you know, banks are getting tighter with their policies. So I don't think it's a horrible thing. We'd have to, you know, you'd have to think about it a little bit, but yeah. So financial issues are always so much fun. It makes me tired thinking about it. So it seems like I deal with financial issues all the time. So, all right. We will send out the current list of charters again, just so everybody can go through it, make sure we have all of the current charters. I know last year I had a work study student go through 4-H Online and compare all of our chartered club, you know, our list of chartered clubs with what was in 4-H Online, and then also with the books that we have. We have probably 10 books of all the paperwork for clubs, which is one of those things that you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm like, we don't need all of this paperwork. And so we are working on that. So Lisa, so we can send that out again though for counties to double check. It doesn't necessarily, yeah, and if it's a county funded employee, I think that's okay too, Lisa. It's whatever your county makes Lisa asked the question, so you're saying that UNR employees should be on the accounts. It's an issue when some individuals working with financials or county funded employees. I think that it would be up to your individual office to decide which one you want on those accounts, if you want anybody. Again, you don't have to have anybody. It's just, it would be up to you to make that decision. The only thing you'll have to make sure is if that person leaves, you need to go in and get them off as a signer on that account and get somebody new on there. So, which has happened, you know, I mean, even in the counties that we have, you know, 4-H staff members or UNR employees, you know, we tend to go through a few, and so they have to go in and sign off on the accounts and sign back in. So the other piece that I'll tell you, we have one county that the clubs, all the funds for the clubs go through the Leaders Council. So each club has their own account in the Leaders Council account. So that's how they access money. I mean, that's one option. I mean, there's, so that way, you know, clubs essentially aren't dealing with the day-to-day finances. So, but it's, you know, again, if you ever have those kinds of questions or think of a unique idea, you can, you know, call and we'll talk through it and figure it out. So, any other questions? If not, thank you guys for attending today. I'm going to, I appreciate everybody attending. And if you ever have questions on finances, please don't hesitate to call. It's something, you know, again, I've dealt with for so many years now, and it's, it still makes my head hurt a little. So, but it's okay. We're getting there. So have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the warm, nice weather, hopefully. Hopefully. So